Park niggas know me. Curtbone, little homie. All days, yeah. Been a road,
Man, my main man, Dave Mays, man, finally got you on the couches changing jewels, man. God damn, good to see you, man. Yeah, I know the with the G18 out there, man, the G20, man. What you got out there, man? What you got out there, man?
You know, just making it happen.
It's making it happen?
Yeah.
Okay, man. We gonna start right off, man, for a lot of people that, you know, don't know where they at. You know, maybe some young bucks out there, man. Tell them where you from and how you grew up.
Yeah, I mean, born and raised in Washington, D.C., you know, upper Northwest. Went to Deal and Wilson for high school, Deal Junior High, Wilson High School.
Tigers.
Yes, sir. And, you know, grew up in the 80s here in the city. You know, got into the GoGo music early and at a young age, and you know, and then I went off to Harvard.
All right, okay, hold on. We don't want to give him too much. We're gonna back up a little bit. So you went to Wilson, the Tigers, right?
I went to Wilson.
I know everybody that go to Wilson, they always say Wilson got the baddest girls in D.C., the best high school and all that, man. Some people say Dunbar, some people say Coolidge.
Yeah.
What you saying, man? Did y'all have them, or that's just a neighborhood school talk, man?
We definitely had some beautiful women at Wilson. They changed the name. I can't remember the new name. They just changed Wilson's name finally, because you know Woodrow Wilson was a serious racist, and you know, they've been working to change the name of the school for a few years, and it just happened, I think, a couple months ago. I can't remember the new name of it yet.
Oh, yeah, that's a jewel, because I didn't know that. That's a jewel right there.
Yeah.
So you say you was into the go-go. What was your favorite go-go band?
Ah, man, well, I mean, first it was Trouble Funk. That was really the first I remember hearing go-go was Trouble Funk. And, you know, and then, you know, Essence and Chuck, but Chuck probably would have been my favorite. But there was a few others, you know, I was messing with.
Yeah, so out of all the bands, did you have a favorite lead, Mike?
No, not necessarily. You know, I guess Chuck really, you know, would be that for me.
Right.
But
yeah. Okay. What's the name? Man, why do you think GoGo didn't never go national or hit like that? What's your opinion about that?
Well, my view is that you know, as you know, I mean, GoGo was really a live, you know, music. It really, you know, it was about the experience of being there live. It was a music that was, you know, it was sets. It was, you know, it wasn't like songs. And, you know, once they kind of figured out, hey, we got to try to make songs, I just think that just no one was able to really figure out how to translate a go-go set that might be an hour-long groove, you know, into a 4-minute record. You know, you had a few here and there, of course, you know, we know the ones, the Bud and the Sardines and a few things like that hit. Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I think just hip-hop really grew faster and kind of, you know, spread around the country before go-go could get around the country. And people loved hip-hop by the time. And, you know, like I don't want to jump ahead, but like I did try to bring go-go with me up to Boston. People didn't want to hear it. Like they, you know, you probably know that. I mean, people from outside of the D.C. area, like they hear go-go, and most people are like, you know, they hate it. Or they don't know what it is. They can't relate to it. It's,
that's the joint. They got to come in town and kind of feel the whole culture of it. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of you see comedians and Dougie Fresh when they go into that environment, it don't never be the same. And then surprisingly, some people can't identify because they be like, I never heard go-go. I say, you never heard Doing the Butt? They're like, yeah, it was my joint.
Right.
So I said, you heard go-go, you just didn't identify what it was, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So, man, we know you end up, we're going to get to source, because that still blow my mind that, you know, a homeboy started a source that ended up being the Bible for hip-hop. But before I get there, man, with all that energy, man, put together and did that, man, you got to share something on the set, man. I know you had some coming up, man, some little side hustles before you got out of school and all that, man. There ain't no statute of limitations on it, man. I was saying, man, there's some little hustles up there, man. I know you did something, man, up there, man.
Not a lot. I mean, I did little things. I mean, I was always an entrepreneur from a young age.
Right.
I always just had that drive to want to make money. So I had the lemonade stands. I had stuff like that. And in junior high school, I built a really big lawn mowing business. My partner, my boy David Scribner, still, excuse me, still my friend today. We started a business. We had about 70 accounts and business cards, and that was a pretty lucrative business. Of course, mostly during the summer times, shovel snow and all that stuff too.
You know, I got a big ear in DC now. You holding back on it, man. They say you had a whole movie theater thing going on, man. They say you had a whole little movie theater going on, man. So, hey, man, I got to do my homework, man.
Yeah, well, me and my partner, my buddy Devil, a.k.a. Derek Hawes, me and him got jobs up at the Outer Circle, which was a theater right down the street from Wilson while we were in high school. And that is true. We did have a little situation there that helped us, generate a little extra income to buy these Sergio Tacchinis and Fila sweatsuits and the sneakers and everything that we wanted. And
I'm not gonna catch you on that one. I'm not gonna hit you with left hook on that one right there, man. I want you to come clean, man. I had to pull that one out on you, man.
That worked. It worked for a while. We had a nice little thing going there for a while. That's true. Yeah. There's a couple other little ones you probably don't know about.
He gave me one more, but I ain't gonna put that one out because of the movie theater got you. I don't want to get you, man. Especially after you said you had the lawnmower business, all the information on it, right?
Right. Oh man, that's funny. Yeah, the Outer Circle, man.
Right. Yeah, definitely, man. So growing up in DC, man, you going to public schools. You ever experienced anybody trying to bully you or trying you like that because they feel like you was a little different?
A little bit. When I got to deal, there was a lot of guys that were coming into deal from, other parts of the city. Merch was my elementary. We had, mostly people from the neighborhood. We had a few people from other parts of the city, but it was pretty calm in elementary school. But when I got to high school, is when I started getting exposed to a little bit of that and, the fights and the different things like that. But, I was always just, pretty laid back. I got along with everybody, made friends with, people pretty easily. And so, I think most of the guys just kind of, looked out for me and, didn't let anything like that really happen. So I didn't really deal with a lot of that. A little bit. I was playing basketball. I thought I was going to go to the NBA. I played ball from a young age. I was very competitive, and But when I got to junior high, see, I was a year ahead. I skipped a grade. I skipped second grade, so I was always the youngest one in my class.
And smallest, probably.
Maybe I wouldn't say that. I did well in school.
I say small.
Oh, smallest. Yeah. So yeah, and that when I look back in retrospect, sometimes I'll be like, damn, I wish maybe my mom hadn't skipped me that grade because I was the youngest and the smallest, and I wasn't as I didn't hit puberty as early as the other guys, and so once I got to junior high, it was a little more physical. And, there was a little more intimidation, type of thing going on. I played a little bit of deal. I played on JV for a minute, and I played at Wilson on JV for a year. And then I got into playing tennis. I was on the tennis team at Wilson for my last 2 years there.
Right.
But,
Oh, okay. Yeah. So who inspires Dave Mays? Who's your inspiration coming up?
Man, well, I mean, coming up, it was, you know, the basketball players that really, you know, like I said, that was my dream. I was going to the NBA. You know, Elvin Hayes. You know, I
Big E.
modeled my game after the Big E.
Big E.
I got a mean turnaround jumper, and
I'm gonna have to check with Mike Gill about that, man. I'm gonna
yeah,
check with your so smart, man.
yeah.
See, I ain't know that. I heard a lot of stuff. I ain't get the basketball joint.
Yeah,
Though.
they'll vouch for me. They'll vouch for me.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay.
Yeah, like I said, I'm still out there balling now. I'm about to play every week out in Chicago with these young guys. I don't think they know how old I am. You know, I try to keep a young look to keep them off guard. But yeah, I'm still running around a little bit. But yeah, it was. I would say it was mostly, you know, athletes. You know, I was an Orioles fan. Eddie Murray. You know, these were like my favorite. You know, my favorite players between, you know, basketball, and then, you know, with the Redskins, of course, I was a Redskins fan, and you know, Art Monk, and you know, some of those guys.
So everything homegrown. Everything was homegrown.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you believe it. Okay, that's good. You like me. That's I'm the same way. Same way. So when you leave a public school, you go to one of the most prestigious colleges on planet Earth, Harvard, man. Was that a culture shock? I mean, coming from a public school, how was that?
It was. I mean, I wasn't really thinking of it like that. When I started thinking about colleges, you know, I came from a family where, you know, academics was valued very highly, and my sister is a couple years older than me. She went to Penn, which is an Ivy League school as well, and she was always at the top of her class, you know, junior high, high school, and everything. And so I knew I had the opportunity to get into some of the top schools, and that was really what was on my mind. A, you know, getting into a top school, and B, I wanted to be in another big city. You know, I didn't want to stay home, but I didn't want to go too far. I really didn't look to the West Coast or anything, but I wanted to be in another big city. So I only ended up applying to 3 colleges, which was Penn, which is in Philly, of course, Brown, which is in Providence, not a big city, but still a city, and then Harvard, which is, you know, right outside of Boston. I didn't know a lot about Boston, and I didn't really know about, you know, I didn't really think about the social life at Harvard.
Right.
So when I got there freshman year, you know, I can remember, you know, here I am, this white dude from D.C. with my Fila sweatsuit on, thinking I'm, you know, cool. And I mean, there was nobody I could find that I could relate to. I mean, the people at Harvard, at least back then, were very, you know, came from very privileged backgrounds, very, you know, removed from, you know, the inner city life. You know, 99% of the people there, you know, were just very different. So yeah, it was a culture shock for me right away.
And one would think from the outside looking in that it's a hell of a networking. Have you able to tap in to any of those networks?
To an extent, but you know, I always kind of just downplayed the Harvard thing. Once I really got going on my own, which happened while I was, you know, at Harvard, you know, I just always felt like, you know, hey, I don't know if I was embarrassed to tell people I went to Harvard, or you know, thinking people might think I was trying to show off or whatever, but I never thought of it, and it never really. I probably, you know, could have made some other things happen if I had tapped more into that network. I still have, you know, some friends, some good friends that I met over the years while I was at Harvard, other students. But yeah, I always, you know, now I wear more Harvard sweatshirts and hats than I ever did in my life. Now I'm proud of it, and you know,
and it's crazy. It's almost like Harvard had that big brother joint. Like, I want to make my own bones. Don't judge me for Howard. You know what I'm saying? I want you to meet me, Dave. You know what I'm saying? And probably son, you probably going through that, right?
Yeah.
But man, like, you up Howard, man. You come up with this monster idea, man. You come up with the Bible of hip hop, man, the source. First of all, I want to say, how did you come up with that? Why did you come up with that? And what was the inspiration of the name Source?
Okay. So how it happened, it kind of goes back to what we were just talking about. You know, once I realized that like I didn't fit in with most of the students there, um, you know, I wanted to start getting off campus and getting out into the other parts of the city and trying to meet people. So there was a lot of guys that would sneak into the gym at Harvard from Cambridge area, and I would meet some guys. One of my buddies still to this day who worked with me for years at the Source, Usman. You know, he was a kid from Cambridge who used to sneak into the gym, and I met him playing basketball, and we got friendly, and that gave me somebody I could relate to, you know, a little more. And you know, I did meet this one guy in my freshman dorm room. I happened to be living in the same dorm room with a guy named John Schechter. John Schechter was from Philly, and he was really into rap music at an early age. Just growing up in Philly, he fell in love with rap music. He had interned for Power 99, the big radio station there in Philly. You know, his last year in high school, and one day I walked in the dorm building and I heard rap music playing from one of the rooms. I'm like, man, somebody's playing. You know, I never heard that up there. So I went and knocked on the door to see what was going on, who it was. I introduced myself. It was John, and we started, you know, talking. And you know, he's telling me about rap, and I'm telling him about GoGo. And
Right.
you know, he had already planned to join the Harvard radio station, and he wanted to try to get a radio show to play hip hop. Now the Harvard radio station was playing, you know, 90% classical music. Like, you know, these Harvard students, they're really into classical music, and you know, that was the big thing there. But they did have a very small kind of black music department that had time slots late on the weekends. And so he convinced me to join a radio station, at least to try it out. And one of the things I learned when I went down there was most college radio stations, you can't sell advertisement, you know, because it's college. They don't allow commercials. But Harvard had a certain type of classification which allowed them to sell sponsors on their shows. And if you got into the ad sales department for the radio station as a student and sold ads, you could make a commission. So the last summer before I went to Harvard, I had taken a job doing phone sales for Time Life books. I used to sit in a big call room, and you know, they give you these lists, and you just call, and I'm calling people all over the country.
Hanging up more.
Yeah, but I was good at it. You know, they would keep a chart up on the you know, on the wall up there every time somebody made a sale. You know, they would put it up there, and I was good. I got good at it, and so I knew I had a knack for sales. So I said, well, this is a way maybe I can make a little money in addition to, you know, doing a radio show. So we ended up getting a radio show late night, Friday nights, maybe 1 in the morning. The show was called Street Beat. And when it started, it was, you know, we were playing rap and go-go. That's what I was talking about before. I had all my tapes with me, all my cassettes, PA tapes, all my stuff, you know, with me up there. And I would go and play it on the radio. But people would they would call in and man, turn that trash off. What is that? You know, they hated it. They hated it. So eventually I had to scale it back. It was, you know, because I took on a radio name of Go-Go Dave. You know, of course, a nod to DC. So it became Go-Go Dave's Pick of the Week. You know, instead of half the show playing Go-Go, now it was just a Pick of the Week, and eventually that went away. But the radio station really gave me more of, you know, something I could pursue and get involved in that I really loved, and also gave me entree into the city. Because now whenever there was a rap concert that would come to Boston, I could get in touch with the promoter and say, hey, you know, I have this radio show, and you know, they would give me tickets and invite me down to the show and that type of thing. And that's how I started getting out into Boston and meeting, you know, rap artists. You know, I was messing with Ed O.G. Before Ed O.G. and the Bulldogs got on. He had a group called the Three Death Notes. That was his first rap group, and I was kind of helping them, got cool with them.
He from that's all them from the Boston area.
Yeah, LOG from Roxbury.
And then the name Source. What made you come up with that name?
Well, so I'm doing a radio show, and I'm trying to sell these ads to make money. Now the radio show actually got a pretty good listenership because back then, there wasn't much rap music on the radio, and it was mostly only on college stations. Boston, as big a city as it is, they didn't have any R&B stations like, there was no WKYS, there was no WOL, they did have an AM radio station, but it went off when the sun went down. So it was only on during daylight hours. So they played mostly R&B, very little rap music. So there was an audience that started finding our show late night, and people would call in from all over the city listening to the show. So I knew I had listeners, but as I would go around to try to sell ads, I would go to the record stores or the clothing stores and tell them, make my little pitch, and they would laugh at me like, who's listening to a rap show on Harvard's radio station, right. Get on out of here. So I'm like, well, how can I prove to these people that I have listeners? So I came up with the idea first to build a mailing list of my listeners.
Okay.
So every week I would go on the radio all night long. I'd call in now, you want to join the Street Beat mailing list? And I would answer the phones all night and write down names and addresses. And then I came up with the idea to put little boxes in the record stores, join the Street Beat mailing list, tear the paper off and drop it in the box. And I ended up with over 1,000 names and addresses of listeners all around the Boston area. And that's when I came up with the idea for the Source.
Okay.
I realized answering those phones all that time and talking to them listeners and fans, they would also ask a lot of questions. They wanted to know, when is the new Public Enemy album coming out, and who produced, that Big Daddy Kane single, and I mean, they had a million questions. So that stuck in my mind, like, people need and want information, and there was no information about rap music anywhere. Nothing. No,
not even New York, nowhere.
Nothing. At that. This is, I got to Harvard in '86. I was there from '86 to '90. So the Source starts in the summer of 1988. So that really gave me the idea, because being as kind of aggressive as I was about trying to be the best and competitive, like I wanted my radio show to be the best, so I took the radio show very seriously. I stayed up in Boston every summer instead of coming home like most college students did, and the shows would go away for 3 months. I stayed up there to keep the show going, every week. And, basically, just
the consistency and that grind it's paid off. But she said something earlier that, man, like, that's one of the main things about our show. Try to drop some jewels. You drop the jewel for any young people that's listening, even old people. Like, you actually took your hustle from your job, making them sales, and you incorporated it into your hustling, into your business mind, and end up being one of the main reasons why you was able to blow your joint up. Because some people be stuck at their job and they good at their job, but they don't know how to translate it, skill set to the business world.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you getting one-on-one with that joint right there, man. That was powerful. But let me ask you this, man. Is it true that the Source discovered Biggie? And if so, who else they discover? Or put the fire? Is that true?
Absolutely, 100%. I'm the reason that we have Biggie, in our world, the way he is and was, and everything. So yeah, the Source starts as a newsletter. The first one is one sheet of paper, a little yellow piece of paper with news and information on the front. Because what I was saying before was like, I was building up connects with all the record labels in New York and LA. I would call and make contacts. Hey, I got the radio show in Boston. I need the new music first. You want to have the new exclusives to beat out any other college radio shows I was competing against, that type of thing. So when I would talk to these people at Sleeping Bag Records or Jive Records or Priority Records, I would get information when new albums were coming out, who was in the studio, different things like that. So that's where I said, I can take the information I'm getting, I'll put it in a newsletter and mail it out to everybody and sell ads on the back side of the newsletter. So that's how it began. Soon as it got going, I'm like, I read a book somebody gave me this book on the history of Rolling Stone magazine, which I didn't know anything about at the time. You know, Rolling Stone was started in the late 1960s by a rock and roll fan, young kid named Jan Wenner who loved rock music, and he started as an underground newspaper, and he built it from an underground newspaper into the voice of popular culture. Rolling Stone in the 70s and the 80s was the predominant, you know, voice of popular culture. Before MTV or anything, it was all about Rolling Stone. And I read the book, and I'm like, man, you know, there's a lot of parallels between rock and roll and hip hop, a number of different ways. And I'm like, I'm gonna build a Rolling Stone for the hip hop generation. And I believed it would be bigger because one of the differences between rock and hip hop is rock and roll, as you know, was created by black folks in the 50s. But white artists like Elvis and the Beatles and the industry took it.
Kidnapped that joint.
And, you know, most people today think of rock, you know, you think of white people and white artists. You don't think of black folks. And with hip hop, you know, white, black, Chinese, Spanish kids, everyone that was young in the 80s was loving the music, and they were loving the black artists. It wasn't too many white out. You know, we had the Beastie Boys. That was about it. A lot of people didn't even know they were white. So I really had this vision that it could be bigger than Rolling Stone, and that became, I was like, that was it. I stopped going to classes the last 2 years. I figured out how I could pass my classes without going to class every day or whatever. And I was, man, I'm going to make this thing. And I just put all my heart and soul and effort and energy into building the Source. So by the time I graduated, which I did manage to graduate, in 1990, we moved down to New York City. Just before then, we started this column called Unsigned Hype. And John Schechter came up with that name and that idea. Once we started putting an address for the magazine, you know, in the copies. And by this point, the Source was now being sold around the country. I had built up, that was another really important thing that I did, was create a distribution network in the mom and pop record stores. So I would find every mom and pop record store I could in every city, you know, up all over the country.
Back then, that's the Yellow Page. There wasn't no internet, right?
Right. Well, definitely was no internet. It was Yellow Pages. It was knowing people, you know, asking people in different cities, hey, what are the record stores? Call information, get their phone number, and just call, same thing like I was doing with Time Life Books. Just call them, hey, you know, Joe's Records in Chicago. This is, you know, Dave from the Source. I got this magazine. Boom, 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 boom. You know, I'm gonna send it to you on consignment. You know, ship you out a box, and you know, if it sells, then you send me a check back, and I'll send you the next one. And you know, it worked.
Turn
you
it
know,
over and over and
over, and it was selling out. Like you know, these stores would start by ordering 10 or 20, and all of a sudden it was 50, 100, 200 copies every month. So the Source was all over the country by this point, and we started getting a lot of demos. You know, it wasn't that different back then. There was a lot of people trying to rap and trying to get their music heard, and they would send these tapes in. And I think, you know, John one day was just sitting around and said, man, let me start, you know, listening to some of this stuff, and let me create a column where we could highlight unsigned artists. So Unsigned Hype started when we moved to New York. A guy named Matty C, who's also very, you know, very legendary in hip hop, who's also from DC. Matty took over the Unsigned Hype column. Matty had left DC and he was at NYU in college. And I had known him a little bit here, and there was a bunch of connections, but he was working for the Source. He took over Unsigned Hype in 1990. And so through that column, the first big name that we discovered was DMX in 1991.
Man. Oh yeah, I got a DMX story. Go ahead.
DMX the Great. Then who was after DMX? Biggie, I think, might have been next. Common, Mobb Deep, Capone Noriega, Eminem, Pitbull, David Banner, Joel Santana. I mean, the list goes on of people who got their starts through this column from us listening.
You would have got a point on each one of them jokers right there.
Oh, man.
God,
We'd have made out. But the Biggie story is, you know, Biggie made his demo with this DJ 50 Grand from his neighborhood, and they hooked up with DJ Mr. C, and Mr. C brought the tape up to Matty at the Source and played him the demo in the Source office. Matt loved it, and we put him in Unsigned Hype, 92, spring of 92. After the magazine came out with him in it, a few weeks later, I get a phone call from my boy Puff, Sean Puffy
Daddy.
Combs, Puff Daddy, Diddy, all that. I had known Puff since the early days when he was interning at Uptown, and I would come up there with the Source magazines and hand them out and stuff like that. So he called me, said, "Hey, man," you know, because he was getting a little bit of a name. He had been A&Ring, you know, stuff for Uptown Records, and he said, "Man, they gave me a deal for Bad Boy. It's going to be my label imprint, and I'm looking for rappers. You know, do you have any?" So I walked down the hallway right away to Matty's office. I said, "Matt, you know, what do we got?" And he said, "Biggie, you know, he's the shit."
Out the park, niggas know me. Curtbone, little homie. All days, yeah. Been a road,